Knowledge is power. Make an impact by learning more. Call us right now for more help at 866-945-8070. How to become a content creation machine. The first part of the answer is, and we're going to have an hour of answers for you, give or take, is that you must write and you can record. What do I mean by that? Well, there's really three forms of content, and in any case, when I produce something, 2 out of the 3 forms are married together. So the one thing that's common to everything that ever gets produced is the written, right? At the very least, we need to write a blog post. Even if your primary form of content is going to be, let's say, videos or podcasts, which are the other 2 forms of content, you still need something written. And the reason why, for starters, is search engine optimization. YouTube is getting more and more advanced. Search technology is getting more and more advanced about being able to find things based on the audio track from a video for SEO purposes. But it's still not there yet. You still need the written word. Now, what you could do is you could record your video, and there are services you can use to get a transcript so that you can extract the written version and use that for your written. The other way to do it, and I've gone back and forth, I've been producing content for many years. I've gone back and forth as far as what the process is. Do I write first? Do I record the video first? And so on. And ultimately, after going back and forth many times for many years, I settled in on a very specific process. I start with an outline, just bullet points. Though that's going to be my guide for when I do record the video. Then I expand on those bullet points to create the full written blog post, let's just call it, right, or article. And then I go and record the video going back to the original outline I wrote. And it's important to stay focused on that outline with those bullet points without looking at a whole written narrative, because if I'm recording a video and I'm looking at a written narrative, I'm going to tend towards reading that narrative, and then it's going to sound like I'm reading that narrative, which means I'm going to sound like a robot. It's not going to sound natural. It's not going to come across authentic. So you must write, as far as I'm concerned, at a minimum. Now, if you tell me, oh, but I'm not a good writer, that's okay. Writing is a skill. It's learned. And so all that tells me is that you just need to write more so that you can get better and better. We're also going to show you a little bit later on an app, or a plugin is what it's really called, that's used with WordPress, which is what most websites are done in these days, and hopefully yours is. If not, you'll want to consider very seriously changing it over to WordPress. This is one example of why. There's lots of things out there that work with WordPress that are going to make your life easier, and what I'm referring to specifically is a plugin called Yoast Seo that, if you use it the proper way, and by that I just mean if you actually use it and use it, you know, both areas where it kind of guides you, then it will literally improve your writing capabilities. Over time, when I first started using Yoast Seo, I would drop my content in, and it gives you scoring, and my scoring would be horrible at first, and I'd have to do a lot of cleanup. But the beauty of it is it walks you through and tells you exactly what to do, exactly how to clean up your writing and make it better, more readable, right? And now I'm at the point where oftentimes I can drop it in, enter what my keyword search phrase is that I want, you know, whatever I want that to be, and oftentimes I get a green light score in both of the major areas. The major areas are readability and SEO. So we'll cover that a little bit later on, but literally using, you know, in other words, there are tools out there, and there's what you're seeing on my screen here, which is a book that you can get, which in my current program, the Accounting Business Academy, we're actually doing a book study with this book as a group. And it's really cool because we're learning from the ground up how to build and run and grow a practice. And so we start with figuring out what your goals are and doing the right planning for the business for the year. And then we get into, you know, we need a money site, a place for people to come to, your website. And how do we get people into your website? Well, we need to have a blog. That's where the content comes in. And how do we learn how to write really good content for the blog? Well, probably reading a book like How to Write Copy That Sells, but more importantly, studying the book. I don't read books anymore, I study them. And this is a book that we're studying together as a group. We're going through it a section at a time, and we're taking notes, and then we're writing examples of exactly what we're being taught to write. in this book. So my first suggestion, if you're watching this, is because you had some interest in learning how to create a lot of content, or maybe not even a lot. You don't have to be like me. I produce a lot of content. I have content all over the place on the web. One of the best pieces of feedback I often get from people is based on the fact that they tell me, Seth, I see you everywhere. You're everywhere, right? And that puts a smile on my face because it means that what I'm doing is working, right? It means that they're finding me and not someone else. So you've got to write. And don't worry if your writing is not great, because worst comes to worst, if you really think your writing is horrible, you can always hire a copy editor to clean it up afterwards. But it's important that it's you, that it's coming from your heart, that it's your brainchild that's going into what's being produced. That's why I'm very much against just hiring somebody to write for you, because then that's not coming from you. And I don't care how well you think you do a job of trying to convey to them what your vision is, it's still never going to be the same as what it will be when it comes from you. Coming from you, it will always be more authentic. And to me, authenticity is the most important thing, especially in this day and age, especially in this landscape, when it comes to creating content. If people get the slightest sense that you're anything short of completely authentic, they're going to run away. And the last thing they're going to do is get motivated to come and hire you for whatever it is that you offer ultimately. So, you must write. You can record. Don't worry if you're not a good writer. That can change with time and practice. The bottom line on becoming a content creation machine is that you must schedule the time to work on it. It has to go on your calendar like any other appointment. It's an appointment with yourself to work on this most important area of your business. We're going to take a short break here, and then we're going to move on to how to manage your blog posts and get ideas. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute. Ideas can come from anywhere. I have literally written blog posts while sitting in the hair salon waiting for my hair, waiting to get a haircut. I've also gotten ideas where I quickly whip out my mobile device and I jot them down because I don't want to forget them. And all I need is an app that lets me quickly open something up so I can get that idea down, and just enough information about the idea so that later on it triggers the memory of what I wanted to, write that blog post or create that content about. So I've got Evernote up on my screen because Evernote's the perfect app to do this with. First of all, it's, I'm showing you the desktop app, but in about 2 taps on my mobile, I can have a new note going in which I can be recording, or writing down, I should say, or even record a voice note, right? You don't feel like writing, you don't want to type on your mobile, record a voice note. Give yourself a note about what the idea was, because I have ideas that get triggered based on conversations I'm having at any given. I can be in the car and something somebody says triggers a thought that all of a sudden I realize, hey, that would make a great piece of content. So you never know ideas where you never know where ideas are going to come from. Ideas can come from absolutely anywhere. So find an app. You can use Evernote. The other thing I've started to do more is I have a content/newsletter project right here in Active Collab, which is my project management tool of choice. And in here, as you can see, and I made a change recently because at one point I had this long list of ideas and it was like, daunting to go through it and try and find something within the list that I wanted to do. So I read a blog post about organizing and managing content that suggested breaking up your ideas, and this will be useful to you once you've accumulated a lot of them, like I have, into what you consider high quality. And then further down here, I have sort of middle priority or quality, and then I have low quality, right? And, this is based on my own ideas and subjective thoughts about it. You might look through my list and disagree with me. That's not the point. The point is that it's a great way to break down the ideas that you have within the list, and now I've got them sort of sourced. And I've done some other things in terms of, you can see I've got some due dates on these when I wanted to. Hey, look where this is this very post, or this very piece of content that I'm doing now. I've also got labels that I'm using. This is an Active Collab feature, so I can clearly see what ideas are on QBO. So if I know I'm looking for it to do an idea on QBO, I can, click right here. And I love using a tool like Active Collab for this because I can clearly write my notes and explain exactly what my thought was, because I've had times when I had an idea and I went to access that idea and I couldn't remember what the heck it was I actually planned on doing. Like, just writing the title wasn't enough to trigger the memory of what I wanted to do. So it's important to record these notes. so that later on, assuming you have no recollection of what your thought process was when you made this note, you'll be able to remember exactly what it is you wanted to do. So that, my friends, is really just how to manage the ideas that you get and then decide, because if you follow what I suggested in the previous segment, then you're going to want to schedule the time. You're going to want to open up your calendar and say, this is, on Tuesdays from noon till 4 o'clock, I'm going to stop answering emails. I'm not going to answer phone calls. I'm just going to work on some piece of content. And then throughout the week, you get these ideas. And so when you get to that time, that Tuesday at 12 noon, this is what you open up and say, all right, I'm going to do this Amex payment clearing video, right? And work down your list, or just pick whatever you feel inspired to do. And sometimes there's no rhyme or reason, and that's exactly how I choose what to do when I do it. Is I just find the thing in the list, I look at these, and I see what jumps out at me, what gets me excited to go do the content. So, again, managing blog posts and getting ideas, all you need is a simple app. I've shown you two now, Evernote and Active Collab. There's other things like Google Keep that just make it real quick to jot down quick ideas on your mobile. So that way, and that's the important thing, I think, is these apps just need to have good mobile access for you so that wherever you are, you can start or you can just stop on a whim and take that fleeting thought that just popped into your head and get it down in a note somewhere that you can refer back to later. So ideas can come from anywhere. Just track them in whatever app works best for you. And stay tuned. We're going to take a very short break here, and then we're going to show you how to write a blog post. So I'm showing you an excerpt right out of my Accounting Business Academy course. In the content, we have a section in that course called How to Become a Content Creation Machine, where we go into all of this in much greater depth than I could ever do in an hour webinar. But nonetheless, I'm giving you literally the Google document in which I've got the lesson written up on how to write a blog post. And in an effort to choose something fairly generic that just about anybody in our audience should have no problem tackling as far as an idea. And it's a great place to start if you're an accountant or bookkeeper looking to start a blog. And assuming that you like QuickBooks Online like I do, a great place to start is to start by doing an introductory post on how to use or how to get started with QuickBooks Online. It's going to be a great way to attract business owners who are struggling, looking for help, and they'll find your blog or hopefully your video and come onto your site and say, wow, that was really helpful, and then they'll call you, which is pretty much what happens to me all day long after years and years of doing this. And it doesn't take years and years. It's just the more I've done it, the more easy it has become to draw in that traffic. So what you're looking at is the part of the lesson where I explain what I mentioned earlier already, is that when I start at this point, and after doing this for many years, I've ironed out a process that works really well for me. And I mentioned that I start by writing an outline. So I said to myself, all right, I want to write a brand new introductory post on how people can get started with QuickBooks Online. And what I actually did was I opened up QuickBooks Online and started looking at it and asked myself, if I was a business owner looking to get started, and based on the conversations I've had with business owners who are looking to get started, what would I want to show them? What do I need to give them so that at a minimum they can walk away from this blog post and video knowing enough to be able to get into QuickBooks Online and start using it? And I thought, the first thing I thought is, they're going to need to know how to find their way around. Where do I find how to go to enter transactions? Where do I go to find the settings, right? And where do I go to get into the different general areas like your sales, right? So I started to create the outline, and it probably wasn't originally in this exact order. I just started writing bullet points, right? That's what an outline is. All it is a series of bullet points. Then you go back in and you start organizing, right? So I don't know what order this was in originally. And by the way, if you want a really cool app for doing this, there's an app called Dynalist. Do I have it in here? No, I have it under Services and Project Management. Dynalist is a great app for writing bullet points. So a lot of times when I do this kind of stuff, it's right here. And I just, again, start outlining it here because, first of all, for me, it's fun to use different kind of apps for different things. And this also makes it really easy to kind of click and drag and reorder things and make things subcategories of others. So it's a great place to start. And then if you copy and paste that outline right back into Google Docs, it comes in formatted perfectly. So again, start by writing the outline. I did, And as I started writing the bullet points, I started organizing them. And I didn't want to get too crazy. I didn't want to have a 30-minute video. I really try to keep these videos down to 15 minutes, right? Because even if I have all these ideas and I could go for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, reality is nobody's got that kind of attention span. A lot of times the business owners who stumble onto my YouTube channel or my blog, tell me at some point that they're looking for answers fast. They're stuck on something. They're in their QuickBooks Online file right now, and they can't figure out how to do something, and they're looking for a resource that gets them to this very specific answer that they're looking for very quickly, right? So you're better off breaking up your pieces into lots of smaller pieces of content rather than having a few large ones. And don't get me wrong, I know there are some people who really like a resource, and I've done content in that format as well. But you have to think in terms of whom are you writing this for? Whom are you creating this for? Who's your audience? And then create it for them, right? So if I'm trying to target small business owners who are struggling with QuickBooks Online because I want them to come here, absorb this content, and then hopefully call me and hire me to help them, then better off with smaller pieces, right? If I'm writing something for other accounting professionals who are looking for a very robust resource that they can bookmark and refer back to, again, different use case, different target audience. So important to think about who you're doing this for, right? Who's your ultimate audience? Because that's going to drive the format. So again, I said, let's go over the basic navigation. I want to show them, first thing they need to know is where to go to do the different things, right? Then we can get into the lists, which is really expanding on the left navigation, right? I have my sales, customers, products and services, expenses and vendors, accounting, chart of accounts. I don't want to go too deep into this stuff. Again, I just want to give them the overview, right? And then we get into basic transactions, how to record that initial deposit. Again, we're targeting business owners who are maybe just starting out. And the first thing they may need to do is, set up the bank account in QuickBooks with that opening deposit that they needed to get the bank account opened up with the bank. And then we also need to make sure they, because by the time somebody's starting a business, it's been my experience that usually they've got some transactions that they need to start entering, usually some expenses they need to record. So definitely wanted to walk them through how to record an expense or a check and explain to them, kind of what the difference is, right? So we start out with this outline, and then all I do is essentially take each one of these high-level sections, and here I'm gonna pause for a second, and we're gonna talk about a little bit of formatting for SEO purposes. SEO stands for search engine optimization, right? Remember, we want to make sure that our content's going to be able to be found by somebody who's searching for this, and there's certain rules to how we want to lay this out. So what I'm getting at is, and I want you thinking about this as you're creating your outline, because this is going to drive very much the layout of your blog post. So we have 3 different levels of, formats. And in fact, if you go into, this is Google Docs, but Microsoft Word has the exact same thing, you'll notice that in my text formatting, default options, I have heading 1, 2, 3, and 4. The title of your blog post is always going to be heading 1. If you're using something like WordPress, that's done by default for you. There's nothing you need to do, nothing you want to do. That's how the title is going to come in formatted. Then as you go to your outline, these at this level are all going to be H2 or heading 2. And each of these is going to be H3 or heading 3. That's as deep as you need to go, right? 3 levels. Heading 1 is your title, and then the first level of your content based on the organization of it is going to be H2, and then H3 for the sort of sub-thoughts or sub-categories, if you will, right? So all I do after I've got the outline written is I take each one and I start with, all right, let's do the overview, right? And over here, here's the overview. Before that, I just write a little bit of an introduction, right? The first paragraph should kind of tell them what they're about to get into, right? And over here, I also include a resource for them. If you're getting started, here's the QuickBooks Online test drive. Why not link to that? And give them a playground, a sandbox to play in while they're going through and practicing what you're here to teach them, right? So always, and people, and this is just engaging. When I see a link inside of a post, I just think, ooh, shiny toys, something I can click on. Ooh, what does that do, right? So it's always a good idea to try and infuse that kind of stuff in here. So then we get to the first level, and notice if I highlight this, it's heading 2. I wasn't lying. I wasn't saying it for my health. And then right away within that, I start with the first sub point, which was the left navigation, right? What do we see as we look down the left-hand side? And they've already changed some of this around. We no longer have employees. It's now called workers, right? I actually hate that name. I love Intuit. I just hate that word workers. I just find it sort of clunky to say. I like employees better, but I get it. Workers is more generic, and then they've added in the whole thing for subcontractors. But I digress. So we have the left navigation, and I'm listing it all out and explaining this, right? And then a little bit more of a narrative about that. Again, don't want to get into too much detail. Next subpoint, heading 3, gear icon. And as I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about the video that I really just want to go and show them, you know, where the gear icon is, and just, again, very high level. I don't want to get too in-depth in anything in the gear icon, because remember, if I start doing that, then I go too deep and too far to the side with it, so to speak, and I start losing my audience. So when the intention is to introduce them to QuickBooks Online, you just want to show them, go into the gear icon. That's where you can change a lot of settings, right? Really don't want to go much deeper than that. Then I show them the quick create, right? Again, another heading 3, another sub level, right? And I explain from this icon you can create any transaction, right? And then now we focus on the kinds of transactions you'll most likely want to post right away: invoicing, writing checks, building your chart of accounts, and making deposits, right? Most accountants would want you to look at the chart of accounts first. I think it has better context for a non-accountant business owner if you've posted a few transactions first. If I were writing this for a new bookkeeping or accounting professional, I would do it the other way around. Again, I wrote this with a specific audience in mind, right? Then I take the lists part. Now we're back to heading 2, right? That's the next major area of my post. And so here I did give a little bit of an introduction before I got into the first sub point, right? And so again, all I really did, once I've written that outline, the point I'm trying to drive home to, look, I've got a typo, is that the post sort of writes itself. Once you've got this outline, now all you're doing is going inside each one of these areas and expanding on the idea and writing. And if you're an expert in this topic, which I'm sure you are, then like I said, this stuff just writes itself once you've got the outline done. The outline just helps you get clear on what you want to focus on, and also make sure you don't go off on tangents, especially when you're recording the video. It's too easy because we get excited about our subject because we're very knowledgeable. We want to go in depth and, oh, and I should tell you this, and I got to tell you that. And it's really important. I've learned this the hard way, believe me, to stay focused and keep it narrow, go deep, or keep it shallow and go wide. So here we're doing kind of shallow and wide, right? I'm covering kind of a wide range of stuff, but I'm not going too deep into any one of them because I want them to walk away from this with at least with the basic knowledge of where to go to find the things that they need to find quickly to get into QuickBooks Online and start recording transactions. And then I can do follow-up posts that go deeper, right? And I did. Since I posted this one originally, I can show you in my blog where I've gone much, much deeper. So again, how to write the blog post, write the outline, have your bullet points, organize it, and then just go inside of each and expand upon it. Elaborate, right? Here we get into the expenses and vendors. Again, heading 3. Notice also, by the way, on the left here, this sort of happened by accident. This is one of the reasons I love Google Docs. Google Docs, I just think, does this so much better than Word. But this is in the tools, the document outline. If I take it away, because yours by default won't be there, click on Tools, go to Document Outline, and it adds it in. And it's basically, if you notice, it's tracking the heading level tags that I've assigned to this, right? So here's my list. So this becomes a nice little table of contents. So especially something like this where, you know, there is a lot that's covered. I may work on this over a period of time. I may work on it, you know, like I said, you schedule the time. Maybe you'll work on this, you know, I gave an example of doing it for like a 4-hour block, which I would suggest, because this way you just get real good focused time on it. But let's say you really don't have that kind of time. Fine. Spend an hour a day and use a feature like this so you can kind of jump around and expand and add on it. You know, sometimes what I'll do is I'll have, while I'm working on a post, especially one like this that's kind of, you know, in depth, or I shouldn't say not in depth, but that's got a lot that it covers. You know, something where I'm going to spend a lot of time working on this, I just kind of have it open in my browser all day. Again, another reason I love a cloud-based document rather than something like Word. But I'll keep it open all day because I have a break or I just get a fleeting thought. I can go in there and let me just write out that quick little paragraph on that one point that I didn't finish yet, you know. So again, I'll keep this open, and throughout the day, I'll just work on it, right? So write the outline and then expand upon each point. And when you're done, you'll have a blog post, right? Here I am, products and services, account mapping, income accounts. Again, just very high level. And then here was the last part, the basic transaction, right? As mentioned above, you don't want to record sales transactions directly into a deposit. So what would you record in a deposit? For starters, that opening deposit, like I mentioned. So I even give them examples and clue them into the fact that if they have sales to record, they don't want to do it as a deposit. I want to at least get them thinking and maybe even asking the question, okay, so what do I record? Obviously, the answer is going to be an invoice or a sales receipt, right? And then here's some examples I give them of what else you would record directly into a deposit: a loan received, other cash contributions, someone repaying a loan that you made to them, right? Those are just kind of the quick high-level examples. Other expenses like credit card transactions. And then, of course, I don't miss out on an opportunity to link to something else that I've got, right? I have a course on bookkeeping fundamentals with cloud accounting applications. So anybody who's reading this blog post would probably be very interested in going to the next level. So I just gave them a whole bunch of really good stuff for free. Click on this, and for a whole $25 a month, you can access this course and others, right? So that, my friends, is really, I think, a pretty thorough overview of how to write a blog post. If you can follow this formula, I think you'll find it's very easy to write. To recap, a few really important points to remember about doing this. One, consider your audience, and then make a decision based on whom that audience is and what you're trying to accomplish with them. You're either going to keep it shallow but go wide, like I've done here, cover a wide range of things but don't go too deep on any one of them, or pick a very narrow topic like everything you need to know about your customers in QuickBooks Online, and then go deep with that. And guess what? That's exactly one of the posts I did after this one. I did a post on everything you need to know about your customers. In fact, if we go here, here's this post, finished, completed on my blog. If I go into my QuickBooks Online category here, I can show you, and of course it's reverse chronological. You'll see what I've done since that one. So there it is, everything you need to know about your customers. I also did a little bit of a deep dive on price rules. New features, always a great idea to run a blog post real quickly. Get that out there as soon as you can. How to record a negative deposit. I'm known for doing these kind of quirky, offbeat things that nobody else is talking about, right? So how to record a negative deposit. I like those head turners, right? Things that make people kind of cock their head to the side and go, what? What is he talking about, right? That gets attention. That gets people to want to read, and it gets people engaged with your content. Here's a deep dive I did: how transactions in QuickBooks Online impact reports. And this is one where I show some examples of entering transactions and then refresh the balance sheet and profit and loss. Another one of my little trademarks, the way I like to do things in videos. And of course, here's this one: getting started with QuickBooks Online, a quick and easy guide. Now, let me talk about the title for a minute, because I don't think I mentioned this. But the title, well, the title's probably we're going to come back to the title and how it ended up on this when we get into talking about the search engine optimization part and Yoast SEO. But real quick, originally I started out just real simple, straightforward. I just want to write a post called Introduction to QuickBooks Online, right? This evolved eventually because I wanted to see, how do I want to drive search traffic who might be looking for this. And Introduction to QuickBooks Online, I'm going to be competing with a lot of other people out there who've probably written blog posts called Introduction to QuickBooks Online. And there's other search terms that people are likely using, especially because when people start searching for something very generic like Introduction to QuickBooks Online, there's a good chance that they're going to get overwhelmed with results that really don't seem all that relevant. So I'm always looking for another way to say the same thing in a way that stands out, but not totally obscure that nobody would ever actually search for this. So getting started with QuickBooks Online, a quick and easy guide. And there's a method to my madness here. The title should do two things: tell them what it's about and make a promise, right? I'm making them a promise that this is going to be quick and easy, right? That I'm going to make it quick and easy for them. That's the promise I'm making. Of course, now I better live up to the expectation that I've just set. And you can see and there's a video that goes with it, obviously. And here you can see it in all of its final glory, exactly as you saw it in the document. If you read through this closely, you would see that there's actually quite a bit of little things that got changed around from when it was here. And we're going to see exactly what I'm talking about when we start talking about the stuff on Yoast SEO, on how to optimize your content that I mentioned earlier. So, my friends, that's how to write a blog post. And in fact, the very next thing we're going to do is look at how to optimize the content, how to use Yoast SEO to take what you've started with and make it even better. Yoast SEO is literally going to teach you how to write better for the internet specifically. Remembering that when people are traveling around the internet, they're traveling at the speed of thought, and you have a very short piece of time in which you have to capture somebody's attention and convince them that it's worth their precious time to read on and read what you've written or watch what you've recorded in terms of a video or listen to what you've recorded in terms of a podcast, right? We've got a very short amount of time to capture their attention. And we're also counting on them entering search words into Google and having our content come up. So we're thinking in terms of what are they searching for. So I mentioned previously that this post started out just being called simply Introduction to QuickBooks Online. Later I evolved it into this because I wanted to think in terms of what might be a keyword, what might be a long search term that somebody might be writing into Google when they're looking for ultimately what I've produced here. And I said, you know, some people might Google something like getting started with QuickBooks Online, right? So you can always check things like this and say, here, you know what, I'm going to cheat because I'm lazy and I don't like to type. Let's just copy this. Oops, I missed one. Let's copy this into a Google search. 388,000 results in 0.54 seconds. Now, I'm sure that's a lot less than what we'll see if we Google introduction to QuickBooks Online. Introduction to almost twice as many. But don't assume that a lot of results means it's better. In fact, the opposite may in fact be true in a case like this, because the fewer the results you have, chances are the more targeted your content is. And you know, it's sort of like what you learn when you start playing around with things like Facebook ads. You know, a lot of people might assume in the beginning, because as you're developing an ad in Facebook, it starts to tell you what your potential audience reach is. And you might get excited because you start doing an ad and you haven't narrowed it down to any people with any interest, and it says it's going to reach 14 million people. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. I want to reach 14 million people. And no, you don't, right? Because you're going to reach 14 million people who don't give a rat's you-know-what about what you're doing. So you're actually, the objective here is to target a narrow audience, because now you're actually targeting people who do care, people who are actually interested in what you're producing, creating, talking about, what have you. So I mentioned that, my opinion, of course, you should have your site switched over to WordPress if it's not already there. For the reasons, one of the reasons that I mentioned is you have a lot of really good tools that work well with WordPress, plus so many people are in WordPress already that it's a very familiar platform. So it's easy to find people like me, for example, who know how to design sites in WordPress. Ultimately, I hired a guy who's become my good friend. His name's Shane McFarlane, to redo my website. And I think they've done a pretty amazing job. I hope you do as well, since you're looking at it. Notice right here, the little Y, that's Yoast. The green light means that I have done well on my SEO here. Over here, we get it again broken down a little further. I told you earlier there's two categories, readability and SEO. Readability refers to how easy is it to read. Could an elementary school level kid understand what you've written? Even if you think you're writing to the most intelligent audience on the planet, you still want to write for the internet in a way that's easily understood, because remember that even the smartest people are moving so fast that it's almost like their reading comprehension level drops dramatically when they're reading on the internet, because they're moving too fast and they're not going to read the whole thing. They're going to read it in chunks and pieces. That's why that outline is so important, because a lot of people will just read those level 2 headings and then decide if they want to read on within any one of them, especially, like I said, when the target is somebody who's working fast trying to find a solution to something very specific very quickly, right? They're going to read those heading 2 level headlines to see which one of those things looks like it might address their question and what they're trying to solve. Okay, so here I have the post, of course, pasted in, and over here you can see that the readability and the SEO is good. It didn't necessarily start out that way when I first pasted it in from Google Docs. So let's go down a little further to where the Yoast Seo Plug-In actually starts to work its magic. And I'll show you a few things. First of all, you have to decide what your focus keyword is. And ideally, you want it to be the first part of your title, if not your entire title, right? Really important. Focus keyword got to be in the title, and it should be at the beginning of the title. Not the end of the world if it isn't, but you want to see what you can do to get it, to orchestrate it that way. So I came in here after I pasted all the copy in, and I put in my focus keyword. I said I want my focus keyword to be getting started with QuickBooks Online. Then you have to save a draft. There are some things that it'll recognize and be able to read immediately, but if you want it to truly be reading everything and give you all the information based on that, you want to save a draft. I don't have the option here because this has already been published, so my only option is to update it now. But usually you'd have this Save Draft button up here. So once you save the draft, it's almost like Yoast Seo goes to work and reads it, and over here they give you the analysis. Now notice I'm in the keyword, which is the SEO. Over here is the readability, right? So like I said, 2 areas it scores me on each. The readability is based on what's called a flash reading score, where the higher the score, the easier it is to read. So if I drop down on the good side, then it shows here the copy score is 74.6. That's actually really good. It's hard to get it over 70, right? So anything over 70 is going to be pretty good. And here's what I love about Yoast Seo. Like I said, it's going to make you a better writer. And the reason it's going to make you a better writer is because when you have things that you can improve upon, it teaches you how to do it. So over here it says, for example, 18.1% of the sentences contain more than 20 words, which is less than or equal to the recommended maximum of 25%. So meaning that 25% of your sentences in your content shouldn't have more than 20 words. The moral of the story is keep your sentences short. That makes your content easier to read. The longer the sentence, the harder it is to read. Remember, people on the internet have the attention span of a gnat. So if you write a really long sentence halfway through, their mind is wandering to what that person wrote in their comment thread on Facebook that they're really mad about, and now they don't even remember what they're reading anymore, right? So keeping the sentences short enables you to more frequently remind them of what they're actually reading, and it helps keep them focused. So your readers will thank you for it. Apparently it's important for a lot of your sentences to contain a transition word. Notice, though, that if I'm not sure what they mean by that, this is linked, and I can click on this, and it takes me over to the Yoast website where it explains all about transition words, and then it gives you examples, right? So this is where I've taken the time as I've written. When I first started using this and I didn't know what they meant, I said, you know what, let me take the time to read and learn this because it'll make me a better writer, right? So I wasn't lying. Here's another big one. This is one of my biggest areas that I had to work on. Passive voice. Evidently, it's better to write how do I put this right? It's better not to write in a passive voice, right? Passive voice, again, this one I had to really do some, like the transition words I kind of got very quickly, especially once I saw some examples. The passive voice was a little harder to wrap my head around, but you don't want to speak in terms of things being done to certain things. You want to create more of an active description of what's going on. So instead of saying, I've written this blog post, I'm going to say something like, I write this blog post. I'm writing this blog post. So I don't want to talk about what happened to the blog post that it got written. I want to talk about what I did, the action I took, which is I wrote the blog post or I'm writing the blog post, right? That's kind of one example. But again, if you click over, it's a nice detailed article they've given you, which kind of explains what it means to write in a passive voice and how to fix it, right? Here's the other thing, and this is so cool. You click this little eyeball here, and then scroll up into your content, and it highlights for you the sentences where it finds the problems, right? So again, it doesn't mean no sentences can be in a passive voice, but you just don't want to have too many. So here, the video above should clarify a lot of what you see in terms of how to get started with QuickBooks Online. So how to get started with QuickBooks Online, I believe, is the part that they're saying is passive. And the moral of the story is try rewriting the sentence a little bit, save the draft up top, and come down here and click the eyeball again and see if that sentence is still highlighted. If not, then good job. You've done your job well. Mission accomplished. You've gotten that much closer. And ultimately, you just want to get a green light here. Doesn't mean everything has to be perfect. Notice it's still telling me there's one area in which I can improve. It says one subheading is followed by more than the recommended maximum of 300 words. So sentences no more than 20 words, and each section after the H2 part should have no more than 300 words. Again, what it's doing is it's forcing us to break our content up and organize it in a way that makes it easy and makes it so that it doesn't seem overwhelming to the reader. You know, like if you throw a wall of text at somebody, if I open up somebody's email and I just see a wall of text, I'm not reading it until I know I've got time to sit down and read it. And if it's a blog post, I'll probably never read it, right? So, you know, there's a psychology to this, and there's a reason. You know, the people who put this together have done their homework. They get it. The SEO, that's the readability may actually be the harder part, because the SEO, again, it's going to give you exactly what you need to do. It's going to tell you the keyword density here is 0.5%, which is great. The focus keyword was found 8 times. It used to seem to want you to have it at least 1% of the time. I guess 0.5%. I don't know what the actual threshold is anymore. It used to be 1%. They've dropped it. And keep in mind, one of the other beautiful things about having something like Yoast is Yoast keeps up with the changes that Google makes in terms of how its search algorithms work. So if they know that Google is no longer needing to see a certain keyword or phrase 1% of the time, they can drop that threshold for you. But the point is the keyword has to show up a certain amount of time, starting with the title, right? And so that's why it's helpful, because once I drop this copy in from Google Docs, it may not have had this focus keyword in here, because later on I decided this is what's going to be in my title. So I went back and I looked for opportunities to infuse that keyword into the actual copy here, right? It wants to see it show up. What else? The meta description. So I didn't show you that. The other thing you'll do is you'll click here where it says, first put the keyword in, then click here where it says edit snippet. So here you have to just, oftentimes you're just going to copy your title from the post itself right down in here. And as long as you get a green light, you know you're good. Ignore the slug, it's going to create that for you. But this part's important, the meta description. And usually what I do is I just take the first paragraph from my post and drop it in here. Your keyword should be in here, and notice it is getting started with QuickBooks Online. Right, so that's important, has to be in the meta description, because that's kind of telling Google what's the main subject of this content. So Google knows that this is what I should produce in my results when somebody's searching, especially if they're searching the exact words, getting started with QuickBooks Online. So you'll drop that whole first paragraph in. Initially, it's probably going to be too long, so you'll start just from the end, backing out copy until you get a green light, and then just make sure that what you're left with sort of makes some sense. So notice here, it says, assuming you're new to accounting, let's go see what my first paragraph looks like. Look at that. I wasn't lying. So I probably took this whole first paragraph, dropped it in there, and started backing up all of this, and I got up to, you know, I got rid of all of this, it looks like, and was left with, you know, just the first sentence. And you can try dropping in just the first sentence, but I've found that oftentimes that's not enough copy. So you get red if you don't have enough, and you get red if you have too much. It's trying to balance you here. And, you know, there's just there's a limit to the number of characters that need to be in here at a maximum. And there's a range. There needs to be a certain minimum at the least and a maximum at the most in terms of how many words or characters go in here. I think you get the point. So the meta description is really important. That's in editing the snippet. And notice this kind of gives you a preview of what it's going to look like in a Google search result, right? So again, if you drop it in and you're going to get probably red lights all over the place here, then all you have to do is follow through. These initially will be up here in improvements, and just go through them one at a time. What does it do? It adds time to the time it takes to get a post done, but it also dramatically improves the quality of my content, which substantially increases the chances that people are going to find it and read it once they do find it, right? Because this part, the SEO, this is about making sure people find it. This is about making sure people read it, right? So between the two, you've got your content optimized. So my rule at Nerd Enterprises is anything that gets published needs to have a green light on both SEO and readability. So we have those basic things. We come up with our focus keyword, we optimize the SEO, we optimize the readability. As far as I'm concerned, if Yoast is giving me a green light on these, then I am good to go, I'm done. One other thing I want to point out in case it wasn't obvious. When you choose your focus keyword, be careful about choosing things that are too generic. If I write a piece and I choose that my focus keyword is going to be project management, I guarantee you that is a complete waste of time. You can get it optimized, Yoast. You'll get the score out of Yoast, but you're never going to rank. You're never going to be able to compete on a phrase like that because there's too many companies that make project management software that are spending $20,000, $30,000 a month on Google ads and paying to optimize for a key phrase like that. So you need to make it longer, right? If you do a post where your focus keyword is just QuickBooks Online, again, dead in the water, not going to do you any good. So be aware of that. You want what they call a long tail keyword, so expand on it, get an idea across, not just a concept, right? So really important when you're coming up with your focus keyword to bear that in mind. So that, my friends, is, now you've seen how to create your content, how to write your blog post. Now you've seen how to optimize it, and now you have about 3 or 4 or 20 reasons why you should be using WordPress, because WordPress and the tools that you can access with WordPress just make it so incredibly easy to do. So that's how to use Yoast SEO to optimize your writing. Next, we're going to take a look at we're going to give you a little bit, we're going to give you, again, high level, not real deep look at creating videos with Camtasia, which of course is what I recommend, especially for our type of content as accountants and bookkeepers. We're going to want to just be able to record our screen. You don't need to turn your camera on. If you don't want your face on camera, not to worry. All you need to do is record your screen and give a demonstration of how to do something that you know how to do really well, whether it's something in QuickBooks Online, or if you're a tax expert, you can probably just create some simple PowerPoint slides and you can record those in Camtasia, going through what people need to know about how to get the most deductions out of their expenses or whatever. So stay tuned. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with online video with Camtasia. Online video with Camtasia. I've been doing videos for a long time. I started creating them in 2008, originally as a way to just answer questions I was being asked frequently, and I felt it was easier and actually better for the person receiving the answer to give them a video that answered their question. I remember one of the first ones I ever did was how to record NSF checks in QuickBooks. This was QuickBooks Desktop. And I remember getting an email from a guy who said that he had like 5 interns in there working with him who supposedly knew QuickBooks. None of them could figure out how to record an NSF check properly. And he writes his comment, he explains that, and he goes on to say, I watched your video and learned in 5 minutes. Right then and there, I knew I was onto something, right? And so I kept going, and I kept creating a lot of videos. And what you're seeing here are 2 emails that came in. One is an inquiry through my website. The other one is a straight-up email. As you can tell from the subject, he's been watching my payroll videos on YouTube, and he's got questions, right? So he says, I have everything reconciled for the year, and obviously he wants help recording his payroll. He's having an issue. This one I love because, not this first one, that one's actually also from today, earlier. But this one I love because of what he says right here. Been watching your videos, like your style, like your info, etc. Believe it or not, one of the things that is motivating me the most to reach out to you is having seen how much you love your aging and ailing dogs. I'm a dog lover myself. You know what that means? That means that I accomplished something that I mentioned to you a while back already in the hour, which is about being authentic. I've gone out there and told people who I really am as a person. I'm not afraid to do that. In fact, I'm very proud. I'm very proud of who I am and who I've become in my life today. So why not go out there and put that out there for people? Because you know what I'm really doing? I'm attracting like-minded people, right? By going out there and being authentic about who I am and the fact that I love my dogs, and I do. We've got 3 of them, and if we could have 10 more, we'd have 10 more, but the city of Burbank, where I live, limits us to 3. So the point is, this guy related to me, right? So I'm connecting with people on a real level because they're getting to know something more about me other than just, hey, he's a guy who knows QuickBooks, right? So I love the fact that he kind of underscores here how he's making that connection with me, and it's underscoring for me how important it is to do what I'm talking about, to be authentic. You know, all too often I see people create videos on YouTube, and in my opinion, this is just my opinion, they're overly polished and overly, you know, like you can tell they spent money and got it professionally done, and yet it feels cold and distant to me, right? I don't feel that warmth, like I'm watching a video that's helping me get to know a person. I feel like I'm watching a commercial, which is exactly what that is, right? So I'm not a fan of doing those highly polished commercial kind of videos. I'm a big fan of being really authentic and getting down to business and getting real, and essentially using YouTube or the video platform in general to invite people here into my home office. Clearly I work from home, right? You know, people want to put like bookshelves and all kinds of crap behind them. I don't. I have bamboo shades. If I lift them up, I've got a beautiful view of my beautiful backyard there, where I have a koi pond and a beautiful big deck and a nice little yard that I love to have my dogs run around in. That's me. That's who I am. I don't try and pretend to be something I'm not. I don't try and pretend to be bigger than I am. You know, I don't try and paint an image for you. It's just what you see is what you get. And I think that's why people like to work with me. That's why they like to connect with me. So you're looking at my YouTube channel. I have almost 13,000 subscribers. This didn't happen overnight, right? It did not happen overnight, and this number just keeps increasing, and the more content I produce, the bigger this number gets, which means the bigger audience I get. So this is why I've started to turn down a lot of the requests I've gotten over the last couple of years to speak at conferences, because they want to sell me on the exposure that I'm getting, but none of those conferences expose me to nearly this number of people. Every time I upload a video to YouTube, it's going out. I get an email based on new videos that came out from all the channels I'm subscribed to. So every time I upload a video to YouTube, it's going out to now almost 13,000 people and climbing. I've never been to an accounting tech conference that has had more than 5,000 people, and that's QuickBooks Connect, and that's the one that I do speak at. Not because of the number, because I really enjoy going there and speaking, and I wanted to pick at least one to do, and so that's the one I've chosen, is QuickBooks Connect. That's the one I stick with. The point I'm trying to make is that while it does take effort, while you do have to carve out time in your calendar, like I mentioned, it pays off in spades. I don't need to do any paid advertising. All of my leads come in organically based on the content that I've produced, and YouTube, or for that matter, video, is a very, very big part of that. You're presently watching a very perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about, right? So build it. If you build it, they will come. All you have to do is produce good, authentic content and be yourself. Don't try and be something that you're not or someone that you're not. And people, you'll resonate. Your content, your message will resonate with people. They will feel a connection with you, and they will come out and they will reach out to you. Most people will just take your stuff for free and never call you. But for the small percentage of people that do, it more than pays. You know, more than pays for the time and energy and effort and everything you have to put in to creating something like this. So that's my 5 or 6 minute rant on why you should make videos in addition to writing blog posts. Plus, it's really easy to do. Like I said, you don't have to turn your camera on. You can keep your camera off. All you have to do is record your screen. And what I'm going to attempt to do here is, in a few minutes, show you just what you need to know at a bare minimum to get a video produced. So that blog post we looked at, how to get started, getting started with QuickBooks Online. This is the video, and this is actually the fully edited video. And this is what it looked like after I was done editing. So there's a lot of stuff. You can see a lot of these little green things here are little transitions that I've created, and I'm going to tell you that there's really just one thing you need to know how to do editing-wise in Camtasia, and that will be enough to get you producing perfectly good videos that you can upload to YouTube and be proud of and have people calling you for more help. Because it's not about the bells and whistles. It's not about, you know, magically automating things and making things pop up and off the screen or any of that. It's really just about getting your audience's attention focused where you want it so they can learn and understand where to go to do whatever it is that you're teaching them how to do. So let's take all of this content down here and let's pull it right off the edit bay there. So I'm blanking it out. I'm going to start over. And we're going to add this. And actually, let's not do this. I'm getting rid of that. Sorry. Let's do this one. Right, so here you can see very clearly is a screen recording. And let me just see something. Okay, that's the one I really want. This looks like just a little snippet that I recorded. So when you initially just record your screen, it's going to look something like this. right? I'm not going to get into the intro. In fact, I've recently posted a blog post on my blog called How to Create Engaging Introductions in Your Videos, something like that. So you can get that on my blog for free anyway. I want to focus on, like I said, the one thing that you need to know how to do, and this is the only editing thing you need to know how to do, and it's called the zoom and pan, and you'll find it here on animations. And all it is zooming in to focus on some specific thing that you're showing them. Right? So what you're going to do is you've recorded your screen now. You know, you hit the record button. It's going to start recording your screen. You're going to talk. You're going to point, click, and explain and teach whatever it is you're going to teach. And then as soon as you're done, it's going to drop it in here, and it's going to look just like this. Right? So what you'll want to do is if I click here, I can zoom in so I can see, you know, I can narrow in on the timeline here. So I can kind of see here's where I'm starting. And here's where the video really starts. Let's play this back.
With Quickbooks Online, a quick and easy.
By the way, before we get into the one thing you need to know, here's the other thing you need to know. Cursor effects, cursor highlight, just right click, add to selected media. That's all you have to do, and you'll see what that does. It'll show a yellow highlight around wherever your mouse was moving while you were in the video. And then I just need to find one little area here where we actually see that mouse going, and oftentimes in the beginning I'm just kind of talking, so maybe a minute. Now you can see the mouse comes into the picture, so it looks like I'm probably about to show something, and there it is. So if I back up here, so my mouse is starting here, and I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I move my mouse around perhaps too much instead of going straight from one thing to the next. But as I zoom in on the timeline, I can now move slowly over to see where was I going with my mouse, and I can click and hold this and see where am I landing there. So I'm kind of giving the quick overview, right? Remember from the blog post, here's the navigation on the left, here's the gear icon and the quick create. Now while I'm up in this top right corner here, this may be an area that I want to focus in on. I may, even with the cursor highlight, again, people very low attention span may not see where I went. So that may be, this may be an example of the one thing you need to know how to do in editing. And if you only do this, that's all you need to do, and you can produce really good videos with it. So as I'm slowly moving, this is called the scrubber. I'm slowly moving it till I see that the cursor is kind of getting there. And now we're going to go over here to where it says animations. And notice while I'm in the animations area, I have two tabs, zoom and pan, and then animations. So we want to be on zoom and pan, exactly where we are by default. You'll notice in the little preview here, it has the little dots around the perimeter, because I can click and drag those to zoom in. So I want to really go from the bottom left here and zoom all the way in to the top right. So that now, as I'm playing it back, I can make it really clear that that's what I'm talking about. Now, if you notice, I stopped the video, and looking at the preview, I can see from here, it may be hard for you to see, but I can see here that the cursor has gone off to the left there. So I want to move, I'm going to scroll just slightly to the right here so I can catch up with my scrubber. I want to move it ever so slightly back to the left because I want to kind of stay with the cursor. Boom. So now it comes back into my range of vision. So I know right at this point in the timeline, I'm about to keep moving to the left and fall off the grid, so to speak. So right about this point is a good time to click here where it says scale to fit, and that just resets it, so now that I'm seeing the entire screen again. And now I can advance it forward. Now I know the next thing I'm doing is I'm going to explain the little hamburger menu that hides the navigation there. So let's back up again. And actually, we'll take this one where I had reset it. And what I just did to kind of snap my scrubber onto the end of that transition, this is the transition that got created when I hit scale to fit and zoomed back out. But instead of zooming back out, I might as well just zoom right in on what I'm going to be showing next. So let's go there. Right, so I'm zooming in now from the bottom right to the top left. And then what I like to do is back this up. I want to kind of play all that back. Let's just make sure I'm not making people dizzy.
Navigation on the left, and we have navigation across the top here. This little guy is called a hamburger menu. When you click on it, it just zips up that navigation on the left.
All right, so now I've made my point. I've shown them what they need to see. Again, here I can click scale to fit to move it back in. So that, my friends, is all you need to know, is how to zoom in and then click scale to fit to zoom back out, so that you keep them focused throughout the video on whatever it is you need to keep their attention on, to make sure that they're focused on what you're teaching them and not some other thing, not some bookmark that you have in your browser or some other application you have open. You know, the idea is to keep them focused and make it easier for them to stay focused on what you're trying to teach them. All you really need to learn how to do to properly edit a video, to have a video that you can be proud of uploading to YouTube, is just what I've shown you here. And really the part where I was showing it to you is probably less than 5 minutes, because the rest of it was me kind of giving you background and showing you a little bit of your way around Camtasia. That's all there is to it, honestly. And now we want to take a look at how to process your videos with Camtasia, because that's going to be the next thing. So when you're done editing your video, you're going to click this share button. And we're probably running a little low on time here, so I'm going to move quickly through this. But there's not that much. Again, I'm going to show you just what you need to know. So always go to Custom Production, go to New Custom Production, and always do MP4. I'll click Next. And the two things you want to make sure of: the size. Make sure that you're using YouTube size, which is 1920 by 1080. Always, always, always. Don't worry about the embed size. That's fine. Okay, video settings. Your Camtasia by default will come in with this quality setting, and it'll be about here, 60%. You want to change it to bitrate, and you want it at maximum quality. Doesn't cost anything extra. Yes, it makes for a bigger video file, but who cares? Storage has gotten so cheap, and ultimately, you're going to just upload this to YouTube anyway, and YouTube's going to deal with the storage, right? Well, you'll keep your copy. But you get my point. You want the maximum possible quality on video, and then same with audio. You want to drop this down and make sure you've got the highest possible quality audio going on. And real quick, speaking of audio, a lot of people are going to wonder what kind of equipment. Obviously, I'm not getting too deep into the equipment, but for audio, for a microphone, what I'm using is called the Yeti Blue microphone. You can get this these days, I think, for about $120 on Amazon. They've gotten really cheap. When I bought mine, it was like $150 or $160. But that's all you need, is to make sure you've got your maximum video quality and your maximum audio quality, and then click Next. And you can pretty much just paste through all this. You really don't need to do much. You don't need to worry about the HTML options, because again, this is going up to YouTube. So HTML would be if you wanted to create a web page on your site with it directly. I don't recommend that. You don't want to stream a video off of your own website. Most likely you don't have the right hosting solution with your website in order to support that kind of streaming and bandwidth on your website. So not a good idea. And then of course here you're just going to tell it what you're calling the video and where you're saving it, right? That, my friends, is everything. Well, actually it's far from everything, but it's what you need to know at a minimum to start creating videos to go along with your blog post using Camtasia. Like I said, you can turn your camera off. You don't need to show your face. You can just record your screen, especially at the beginning when you're trying to get comfortable with it. Probably a good idea anyway, because if you do have your camera turned on, you actually create extra editing work to be done, which again, at the beginning you don't want to do. You want to keep it as simple as possible. So start very simple. Do a very short video on how to do something very specific in QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop or whatever accounting software you like to use, and just get comfortable. Just do it. Just set aside the time, put it in your calendar like I said, and just do it. Just spend some time doing it. The more you do it, I'm fairly certain, if you're anything like me, the more you do it, the more you'll like it. Maybe you'll even become obsessed with it like I have and just want to do it all day long. But it's not a terrible thing to get obsessed with, because I can share with you that I make quite a good living as a result of all the video content that I've done. And to a large extent, I get paid now to produce content, or I get paid as a result of the content I produce, is really probably the better way to put that. So that's it. You're going to start creating your videos. You're going to start editing. Like I said, all you need to know how to do is zoom and pan so that you can keep people focused. And that alone is enough that you can then process a really good video with it and then upload it to YouTube with the settings. When you complete the process, it's going to take a few minutes, or it may take a while depending on how long the video is. Once it's done, you're going to see the folder with all the output files. You're looking for the one that ends in .mp4. That's your video file. That's the one you're going to upload to YouTube. So we're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about two really quick things: podcasts and Gif Images, and then that'll be a wrap. podcasts are great, first of all, if you're camera shy, especially, even though, like I said, you don't really need to turn your camera on with our genre of content that we're going to be typically doing in the accounting industry. But nonetheless, you might prefer to do a podcast. Podcasts are kind of fun. Not kind of fun. It's a lot of fun. I started one with my co-hosts, Deborah Kilsheimer and Erica Ed, and it's called The Authentic Accountant, and you can find that on my website at nerdenterprises.com. Just in the navigation, go over to podcasts, and you'll find it there. The way we do it is really simple. We actually log in together using Zoom webinar software, and we record the Zoom. And when you record something with Zoom, you get that MP4 file that it produces, which is the video that, when I do my Friday Zoom calls, for example, that some of you may be familiar with, I take that MP4 at the end of each Friday Zoom and I process it, I put an intro on it, and I upload it to YouTube, right? Well, what I do with the podcast is I record it in the exact same way. I can take that MP4 file that Zoom produces and put it into Camtasia, and then I can actually strip out the video part, or just without even stripping it out, I can take something from Camtasia here, and I can just, when I go new custom production, I can just do AVI audio interleave video file. And when I do that, it's going to produce, or actually I do M4A. I'm sorry, I do M4A audio only, because that can easily convert. So couple of hoops to jump through on this. So you produce the audio file. By the way, super fast to produce audio. Video is what takes a long time to produce. So this file output, even on an hour-long video like the one you're seeing on Camtasia here, it's actually the very one that I'm recording now for your purposes, it will produce like within 5 minutes. Then you're going to take that M4A file, and I have something called Avs Audio Editor. And this program is about $30 last time I remember buying it, I think. 30, 40 bucks. And you're going to take that audio file and you're going to drop it into AVS, and it's real simple. Once the audio file kind of loads, you're going to go over to save, and you're going to choose to save it as an MP3, Mary Paul 3. MP3 is the sort of standard and preferred audio file format. Now, once you do that, you have two major websites that you're going to want to put it on. Probably not a bad idea to put it on both. One is called SoundCloud. The other is called Libsyn. Once you've got your podcast, and I haven't even gotten this far with mine yet, I wanted to get 10 episodes recorded, which I now have. So pretty soon I'm going to start uploading them to both of these sites. Once you have a podcast in these sites, then it's very easy to get them into iTunes and Google Play Store and some of the other major areas that a lot of people go to look for podcasts. So podcasts is another great way to source an audience based on your genre of content, based on what you like to talk about. It's like having your own radio show that you can do every single week. That's a lot of fun. You can interview people. There's so many directions you can go with it, and you can, just like with video, you can go wide and keep it shallow, or you can go narrow and go real deep on a subject matter. And again, you can invite guests on to interview. Heck, invite me. I'll come on your podcast, especially if I know that I was the one who inspired you to do it. So podcasts are a great way to get content out there in another form. And a couple of things to think about here, why you might actually want to do podcasts before even video. Videos require 100% audience attention, right? The idea of a video is I need somebody sitting there watching me show them what I'm showing them in the video. Podcasts can be more passive. A lot of people love to listen to podcasts while they're working out, while they're working. Podcast is something that can be kind of in the background. I'll do that. I love to listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast. I often listen to his podcast in the morning while I'm kind of getting ready to start my day, and I'm sitting here and I'm going through emails. It's either going to be music that I listen to on Spotify, which I also love to do, or it's going to be a podcast, very possibly from Tim Ferriss. I also like to watch Gary Vaynerchuk videos. Sometimes I'll kind of watch his videos like a podcast. In other words, the video will be playing, but I won't actually be watching it. I'll just be listening to what he says, because with his stuff, you just need to hear it. You don't necessarily need to see it. So again, podcasts don't require 100% attention like videos do. So in some ways, you have potential to reach more people, who don't really have the time maybe or the bandwidth to sit there and watch a video, but they'll listen to your podcast. So again, just to recap, record your podcast in Zoom. You can edit it in Camtasia and produce an audio file. Then use a service like SoundCloud or Libsyn to host it. And I have mine, like I said, uploaded directly to my website. And once you've got that going, then you can actually Google the instructions. It's really easy for how to get your podcast into Google Play or iTunes. Last thing, and we're going to wrap up with this. Creating GIF images. Why do GIF images? I'll tell you exactly why you should do GIF images. Let me bring up an exact example of why you should do GIF images. So earlier last year, I came up with this idea. It's based on a similar concept I had done years ago, where when Twitter was newer, I had written a book and got it out there with the help of my friend Chris Perillo called 140 QuickBooks Tips. So recently I did hashtag 140 QBO tips, 140 coming from what used to be the character limit on Twitter. It's now been extended to 280, but I was not about to write another 140 tips. But GIF images have a way of capturing your attention, especially when you turn on that cursor highlight I showed you. So when people are looking at these on Twitter or Facebook or wherever I've posted them, the movement, the motion has a way of catching your eye. And what all these are 5 to 20 second videos that I created in Camtasia, and by limiting them to 5 or 20 seconds, when you go to produce it in Camtasia and I choose new custom production, I'm just going to create a GIF animation file. It's right here. Camtasia makes it so easy to do. A couple of things, or one important thing to keep in mind that I learned the hard way going through this very process of creating my pound 140 QBO tips, is if you're going to use services that automatically push your content to things like Twitter and Facebook, which I use heavily. I use a service called Meet Edgar. Then the width of the output of image that you create here has to be less than the YouTube size that I showed you when I showed you the settings for producing videos. The width has to be no more than, man, I can't remember it. Hold on a second. I can actually look this up really fast because I know exactly where I made a note of it. Right in my Evernote. Let's go here. Action. Fix. How to fix 140 QBO tips. See, I had to go through a bit of a process here. So the width has to be 1080 by 6. Well, 1080 has to be the width. The height doesn't matter. But the width has to be 1080. The standard width that you produce in with Camtasia, as I showed you earlier, is like 1920. So it has to be like half the width in order for you to get it pushed through the Twitter API. If you post the image directly to Twitter, you can leave it at 1980. So it's only if you're going to use services like Hootsuite or Meet Edgar to push your images to Twitter, then that was the only thing you have to be aware of. So your quality is going to drop a little bit when you narrow the size of the width of it. But the bottom line is GIF images are a great way to create engaging media that you can put out there on social media and get people's attention, right? And they're just super quick. Talk about when somebody wants a very fast solution to a very specific thing. This is a perfect way. You can literally do like a frequently asked questions library in the form of these GIF images. And they're distracting to the point where it's almost annoying, but from our perspective as content creators, this is exactly what we want to do. We almost want to be annoying. Of course, we don't really want to be annoying, but you get my point. You want to. The whole idea is everybody out there is competing with you to get people's attention. So you have to win. You have to get the attention so that you can get the audience, so that you can get the people absorbing your content, so that you can get the people making that connection with you, so that you get that smaller group of people who are eventually going to call you up and say, I love your stuff and I'd like more help. This, my friends, has been actually a little bit more than an hour's worth on how to become a content creation machine. As always, I sincerely hope you got a ton out of this. You know where to find me, nerdenterprises.com. I'm all over social media. Just search Nerd Enterprises pretty much anywhere on the web, and you'll find me. I've made it a point to make sure my presence is known on every major and even a lot of minor social networks. And again, I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, had some fun along the way. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.